is the Talk Radio Europe Book Show with Hannah Murray.
Joining us on the line now from the UK is William A. White. From an early age, he developed a passion for writing and fundamentally for entertaining people. We had him on the book show about 10 years ago, I reckon now, talking about the zany 5-hit stories. Well, he's with us on the book show again because he's just published his first novel. It's called The Gardener. It started life as an outlet for his frustrations following 2 of his friends falling victim to a violent attack. Having hit writer's block at various times, he finally finished it 20 years later and is now working on the sequel, The Butcher, in a planned series of 7 novels. Welcome to the book show, William.
Hello, thank you very much.
Oh, it's great to have you back with us. So you've been busy.
Well, yeah, not writing, it would seem, is what I've been busy doing. Just life being life. I remember that interview quite fondly about 5-hit stories, where I was finishing The Gardener. I believe it might have been Vigilante at the time. And thought, yeah, I'm nearly there, and writer's block again. And, of course, I can quite easily blame the wife, the children, but inevitably it was video games and being lazy, really. Just being too tired to finish the project.
Yeah, so well done for being honest. It's hard, isn't it? It's a big commitment writing a book. It really is.
Yeah, I find myself, I have to be in the right mindset. And unfortunately, when you're knackered through various life challenges, including a normal job and, as I said, the career, the wife, the children, just found myself completely emotionally, mentally drained. And fingers to keyboard or pen to paper just didn't really happen. So it's been a labour of love, as they say.
Yeah, well done for doing it. It must feel fantastic now that it's out and published.
Yeah, it's good. It's taken me a little while to do the editing process. There's an author I follow, Will Carver, and he says it quite beautifully. And I could try and paraphrase it, but I shan't. But effectively, he says once he's finished a book, he's fed up with the editing process when you read it and reread it and reread it and reread it again. And I can certainly empathise. So I'm glad it's out there. I'm glad it's done. Now it's time to try and market it a little bit, try and get people to buy it, pick it up and read it and review it, more importantly. And work on the sequel, which has been in the works for some time, but I haven't actually put pen to paper, but it's certainly... publishing The Gardener has inspired me to actually pick it back up and start again.
Oh, brilliant. Well, that's great. So going back in time a bit then, can you tell us a little bit about what happened with your 2 friends and what inspired this book initially?
Yeah, so I've always written. Writing has always been an outlet from a young age. This specific incident that occurred was a couple of friends and I. It was after England had won 5-1 against Germany in 2001, so going back quite a few years, 2 decades now, almost exactly. We were on the way home, and we were passing a lady and her fiance, husband, boyfriend, whoever that person may be. He was getting a little bit aggressive towards her verbally, so we kind of had a little look. Nothing was happening. We carried on with our ways and went our separate ways home to live on the same street. It's a bit of a confusing, longer story. But effectively, this thug had followed us and then approached the 2 of my friends with a dog chain wrapped around his knuckles and proceeded to attack them, effectively, for us looking out for the welfare of his girlfriend or whoever that person may have been. Luckily, they weren't seriously injured. They were injured and ended up going to the hospital, but nothing long-term or life-threatening. And effectively, without having a better term for it, I was very angry at the situation, frustrated at the situation, and created this character who would take revenge for me. So that was where it was born, almost 2 decades ago.
Yeah.
I think probably the initial frustration and anger was probably part of the initial writer's block as I ran out of anger.
Interesting. And what an awful thing to happen to your friends. But thank goodness it obviously could have been worse, couldn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's a situation that obviously neither of us would like to have lived or relived, and there was court cases and had to give testimony. It was all very exciting. But it's obviously kind of led effectively to this, to the creation.
So tell us about this character that you created then. Is it based on the attacker?
So it's based on a chap called Edward. He is, if you like, a normal office worker, nothing overly exciting. And he is very much, I guess, initially me in various ways, shapes and forms. A bit humorous where he can be or thinks he is, but he finds himself in situations where he will freeze or flee rather than standing up for himself. Not necessarily physically fighting, but at least kind of voicing his opinion and standing up for himself. And he very quickly, in the first chapter, you'll be pleased to hear, discovers that backbone, but almost by accident, and finds himself reacting to situations in ways that he would not normally. Kind of almost gets the fighting confidence, so to speak. And it doesn't go well in some respects, and he ends up trying to, I guess, cover his tracks. But then he kind of reads more into it, and in the aftermath, he's exploring themes of coincidence, fate, and purpose to try and work out what he should do in life and what his true path is. And effectively, through lack of a better term, becomes a bit of a vigilante.
Okay. And there's a fair bit of violence in the book, but also a touch of humour, which is nice. So it kind of balance each other out a bit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think if it was and again, I think this is true of most authors. I only like reading what I like to. Sorry, I only like writing what I like to read. If I have a book that's too serious, as much as I might enjoy it, I kind of get to the end and just kind of think, that's a bit heavy. So a little bit of comic relief every now and then, a little light touch of humour, and also, I guess, touching into the humanity of Edward, because it would be too easy to just see this chap as quite a violent individual, whereas actually there's a lot more going in on there, and actually there's a lot of humour as well.
Mm-hmm. So is Edward the gardener?
Yes, yeah. There is a convoluted link, which hopefully if people read it, they'll pick up on it. I wonder if it's one of those things where I'm trying to be a bit too clever, and it's not as obvious. But there is also, halfway through the book, you also meet a gardener, shall we say.
Okay.
So there's a few different levels of which the gardener exists. It may well be too clever. I say too clever, too obscure. I think that's probably the right term for it. But perhaps in the sequel, I'll spell it out a bit more clearly.
And you mentioned the sequel, The Butcher, you've already got planned, and you've already planned a series of 7 novels. Why 7? How did you come to that figure?
So probably it was about 9 years ago when I was approaching publishers and agents and everything in between that obviously fell on deaf ears or eyes or anything in between. When I was reading into various bits and pieces, it said about, is there a plan for a series of books? And at that moment in time, there wasn't really. It was just The Gardener. There was a plan for a follow-up book, which was going to be completely different. But actually, it would have gone too quickly for how the character escalates. It's weird. I don't like spoilers, and I don't like to give spoilers. So effectively, this 7 series of books eventually will lead to something a bit bigger, introducing other characters into the fray. So yeah, it was kind of stirred up kind of 9 years ago, thinking, where is this going? Is it just a one-off, or is it actually a series of books and stories? So yeah, there are 7 planned books, if you like, with effectively 6. It may be shorter than that when I actually find myself putting pen to paper, but 6, and then a 7th book culminating all 6 together under one glorious loop.
I'm impressed that you can plan that far ahead.
Well, it might change.
Yes.
I remember when I first approached agencies and agents, should I say, back well in 2002, probably I'd done 3 chapters, and very much I'd seen that you could approach agents with just a few chapters. So I thought, okay, fine, but they like you to outline how the other chapters are going to go. And I looked recently at how The Gardener was supposed to go, and it just went nowhere near it. I had this complete different story arc that as I was writing it, it just felt rushed and didn't make sense to get to where it ended, where I thought it ended up, if that makes sense. So I think although I've got 7 planned and I know I've got an idea of what I want to do, what I want to achieve, I know inevitably when I'm writing, it may well change direction.
Yeah. And how did you, I know it took a while with breaks in between and everything, but in general, how did you find the process of writing a full-length novel compared to the short stories that you'd done previously?
A bit of a chore in the nicest sense. I know I shouldn't say that, but actually it was definitely, 5 hit stories, completely different kettle of fish. It was sit in my study and write everything and anything that popped into my head with no planning, no forethought. It was just freedom. Whereas The Garden, because I had this idea of where I wanted to go, getting there was actually quite tough. And I found myself hitting writer's block, not just twice, but, over and over and over again. I actually did the cliche, cheesy book a hotel and actually for a weekend and leave Charlotte and Willow, my wife and daughter, to their own devices for a weekend while I tried to push through this kind of chapter that I'd got myself to. I didn't know where I was going next. I found myself at quite a lot of occasions trying to work quite hard on it. Once I actually got my mind set to it, it was fine, but it was getting to that point that unfortunately took a long time.
And did that work? Getting the hotel, getting away for a weekend, were you able to knuckle down and get things written?
It did, yeah, it did. I didn't get as far as I wanted to or I had planned. That's a common theme with me. But I managed to push through it. Again, distraction is the worst thing for me. And I was in this hotel and they had a TV. Now I know I just shouldn't switch the TV on, but occasionally I'd switch the TV on or go for a walk because it wasn't quite in the wilderness, but there was some nice kind of green spaces to go and walk around, which you needed that break. But inevitably, I reckon I probably went on the Friday night and came back on the Sunday morning, and I'd probably done about 5, maybe 6 hours of writing in that entire time away. But it was enough to be able to actually push me through and get me to that next part in the chapter. Albeit then put it down for another 10 years before I picked it back up again. But hey, let's not worry about the in-between parts.
I have to say, William, I love your honesty and the reality of the fact that writing a book isn't easy. So many authors come on and they're writing 1, sometimes 2 books a year. And I just think, how is this possible? I understand completely that life gets in the way. And when you've got a family and you've got a job and you've got the household and things that need to be fixed and, things that are going wrong and just general life, that it must be really, really difficult to do. So it's honestly, it's really nice and refreshing to speak to someone who has really struggled with it, and it's taken a long time to do it. I sympathise and understand.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's I'm usually too honest. That's usually my problem in life. But yeah, it's I can use all the excuses under the sun, and I'm pleased for those who are able to do it. But and maybe again, this sounds like the kind of thing I should say, but my dedication to my current career and my wife and children outweighed that for being an author, really. So, but it's kind of more recently, maybe it's the lockdown, I won't go too much more about it, really kind of puts you into focus to say, do you know what, I can do all these things. I just need to set some time aside. I need to be a bit every now and then. So laziness mixed with dedication, and that creates delays. But I appreciate you appreciate my honesty.
Definitely. Well, it's one of those things, isn't it? It's you could say it about exercise or whatever, all the things that we kind of want to do, but theoretically, in inverted commas, don't have time for. We're all very busy and we all have to prioritise. And if it's something that you want to do, whether it's, as I say, exercising 3 times a week or writing a novel, you have to prioritise and you have to set aside the time in order to do it. Otherwise, it just doesn't happen.
Absolutely. And I should probably make it clear that my wife and children have never explicitly said, stop writing and come and spend time with us.
No.
In fact, far from the opposite. The kids not so much, but certainly the wife, as you know, my biggest supporter, has always said to me, "You do whatever you need to do." But inevitably, once the kids are in bed, she'll then say to me, "What are you doing this evening?" And I'll kind of look at her and go, "Oh, I don't know, what were you doing?" She's like, "Sitting on the sofa having a cuddle watching a movie." "Okay, well, that sounds good. Let's do that. I was going to write, but let's do that instead." So,
exactly.
I should make it clear she's never explicitly put any holds on me trying to.
No.
It's me and my own laziness.
Fair enough. Well, you've done it, and you can be very proud. It's out now. It's called The Gardener. It's by William A. White, who we've been chatting to. Listeners can get a copy of the book from our website, tre.radio. It's there in the bookshop section. Congratulations, William, and thanks for joining us on The Book Show.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on.